bush, you can make extracts, which is by far the most effective way, and you can put amounts of up to 30 tonnes. But in Holland, where you can actually get it for €6 a tonne because people pay to get this stuff. You have to. If you cut your frontage, you've got to take that organic matter and pay to get it composted. It's just the deal in that country. So they make their money from composting because they get paid to compost, and they charge this as little as €6 a tonne for the compost. There are other ones with things added, but €6 for the base. So people will put like 100 tonnes. Terrible idea, that much compost, because what happens is you just blow potassium out of the water, and potassium shuts down calcium, and it actually messes up your soil. So you can use anything can be overdone, and compost at that rate is too much. So David Johnson, and both of them microbiologists, and his wife Hoi-Chan Su, they developed this concept, and they're sort of academics working with microbial research, and it's become this massive kind of global phenomenon, the concept. I sort of shunned it because I'm an impatient bastard, basically, and I thought, why wait for a whole year? I can make a BAM compost in 2 months, and that's how fast you can do it with BAM. Why would I wait for a whole year? Just how much life you got left? It's too short a time. It's too long a time. And so I sort of wrote it off and didn't do it. But then I was researching for the podcast, and I come across all these papers. And I thought, oh my God, I've got to try this. And then I had someone from a manager of one of the Fairfax Farms groups, of course, they're media barons who own land everywhere now, and he was describing they use it as a seed, they use it in liquid inject, and you're only using like 1 kilo to 2 kilos per hectare extracted, beating the hell out of it and getting all those fungi diversity off it. And he said they're just getting tremendous results. They're going to have 100 of these units in, he reckoned, by the end of this year. The results have been so good. So we'll talk about how you do it. Basically, often you just use a 1,000-litre shuttle. You take out the plastic, you'll see out there, you take out the plastic bladder inside it, and then you put landscaping fabric stapled or wired onto that square frame. Neither of these are that, but it gives you the concept. You put that shuttle on a square metre pallet, so you've got an ordinary pallet, and then you take a bandsaw and you cut the hole of a 4-inch pipe. See, the pipes have all got these breathing holes drilled all over them, and you basically position, you don't want them more than 30 centimetres apart. One of my guys at the factory actually made it slightly bigger, and that's a mistake. 30 centimetres apart, because that's how far the air can move very effectively in terms of aerating your compost. So 30 centimetres between that and that, 30 centimetres from the edge and that, 30 centimetres between that and that, 30 centimetres from the edge and that, 30 centimetres and so forth. So you mark that out on your pallet, and you cut your little round hole, and the bottom of the pipe pokes in and is held firm at the bottom in that little template you've made on your pallet. And then you poke your pipes in there, and you often need to set up a little bit of a framework, and that can be much easier than this, but a template to hold it while you fill it. Now you're going to take organic matter, leaf matter if you can get it's wonderful, and you put a little bit of manure, but not much, because it's actually counterproductive to get it too hot. So you fill this thing up, and basically you put a cap on the top of these, so you're not filling up, as you're forking it in, you don't want to have, or it might be with a bobcat on a larger scale, but you don't want to put it in the end, so you get those little sealing caps that pop on the top. And then, once you're finished, there's a whole thing we're going to talk about how much moisture you need to have in there. But basically, they say you leave it 1 day. Well, I'm not going to risk that. Why would you? You pull the pipes out after 1 day, and that hole remains for 12 months. Why would you gamble that, I think? Why wouldn't you leave it a few days? Because what happens is the fungal activity cements that opening, and you've got this perfectly breathing from the ground up. You've got the hole in through the pallet, and so it's coming up from the bottom, and it's coming in from all sides with the holes can pass the oxygen for a foot, is how that's working. So, we know that we've knocked the hell out of our fungi, and DNA analysis of theirs has seen 2,500 different, billions per teaspoon, but 2,500 different bacteria, but 4,400 in one recent study of different fungi species, many of them, but 4,400 different ones, and that's what we want. Biodiversity is what nature wants. And this is a wonderful way to achieve that. So it's kind of like, you know, we talked about, well, I haven't talked about sourdough, but bread, you know, bread has got some negatives. Bread, one of the reasons that so many of us are zinc deficient is overconsumption of bread and cereal grains generally. Why? Because it's just a natural acid found in cereal grains called phytic acid, Phytic, and phytic acid grabs magnesium and grabs zinc and locks them up, and they're two biggest deficiencies. Why? Because we're eating too much grain. You weren't supposed to have your cereal and your piece of toast and your morning little sandwich and your roll and your afternoon cake and your pasta for dinner. There's a massive overconsumption of cereal grains, and consequently that natural acid then has that process. Now there is a second thing, and that second thing is that all seeds and grains contain things called enzyme inhibitors, so they don't sprout prematurely when they're not supposed to. So, and that's not good, because when we talk about making your own wonderful fermented food, which we'll do next, we know that part of the reason, well, I'll talk about that next when we get there. I won't jump the dough, but the concept to make bread good is sourdough. Sourdough removes the phytic acid and the enzyme inhibitors, and 24 hours is better than 12 hours in terms of a sourdough culture. So there's no comparison between sourdough and conventional bread. If you could source, which you can in most supermarkets, although sometimes they're a bit dicey, their production of it. We've got a baker at that little market, $12 a loaf, but my God, and people are lined up way down the street. You think, that's expensive for a loaf. I'm going to spend $3 and get 30% soy with fresh bays of Roundup on it for my kids. I mean, no, it's not expensive, because it's a bloody hard thing making sourdough bread, as some of you probably developed during COVID. So breathing pipes positioned no more than 30 centimetres apart are removed after a day. Why? Why not wait for a few days? Perforated, and the hole just stays there. So I left it 5 days in my first one I made, and it stayed for the whole 12 months, a breathing hole, 30 centimetres apart. It stayed there, it cements in, and the oxygen just goes down there and spreads out and aerates that whole thing beautifully. Now you can use these kits, once you've made one of these things up with a 1,000-litre shuttle, you can use them to grow trichoderma. Really cool way to grow trichoderma. You can follow that idea of half straw, half manure, and put it in there, and they need all that oxygen. Beautiful way to multiply trichoderma in a much, much shorter period. It only takes a month, using your Johnson Sioux bioreactor for that purpose. 70% was the big finding, and the way you do that is just 2 minutes with a timer on a hose with a couple of little sprinklers. You can see the little sprinklers here that will cover that area, and it's just 2 minutes of irrigation a day will maintain somewhere around 70%. So you've got a little timer, and it comes on for 2 minutes, and that maintains that 70% moisture for the whole really lengthy to a 1 year period for the whole thing. When the temperature drops down to 26 degrees, so there's a bit of warmth generated, you don't want too much nitrogen, but there's a little bit in there, and when it drops down to 26 degrees, it gets a bit warm, but when it slows down, then you add, it's really precise for that cubic metre, which is the 1,000-litre shuttle, it's just exactly 100. You don't want a whole bunch in there that fast-track the whole process. 100 they've worked out for that cubic metre is the right amount of worms that you put in there, and they'll just slowly, that 100 worms, not many, work their way through. You don't want it finished before 12 months, which, you know, you put in a kilo of worms, it's going to be over in no time, because they'll just munch through the whole thing. And, you know, this mass, when you finish it, it's kind of like plasticine. You can squeeze it together like this clay, black, pitch black stuff you can squeeze together into a ball sort of thing, sort of a bit like plasticine. That's what you're looking for. And then you use that extraction concept to basically blast that humus and remove the organisms as an extraction at the rate of just a kilo of this end product to 2 kilos max per hectare. So, you know, it's pretty good. You made 1,000 kilos. It's probably going to come down to about 700 kilos at the end of that, but that's 350 hectares for one bin. As we said, Fairfax have got thousands of hectares, so they've got a lot of bins happening, but they've got great results for that. So minimise your end sources. Tends to encourage the formation of really high numbers of nitrogen-fixing organisms if you don't have too much N added. Wonderful. There's one study with a 5-fold yield increase from that liquid injection of 2 kilos in that instance of that N mix. So it's really quite special, and it's really worth experimenting with. So we'll talk a little bit about Protozoa Tea, and then we're going to have a break. Why would you bother about making a Protozoa Tea? Well, they're really important in the soil. We'll talk quickly about what they do, 5 key benefits. The first concept is that they constantly eat bacteria. So you've got a watermelon-sized protozoa that eats 10,000 bacteria a day. Now you are trying to maintain your carbon levels, and for every 6 5-to-1 bacteria, that's the carbon-nitrogen ratio of bacteria, 6 5s make 30, you're 30-to-1. You're eating 6 and you're spitting 5 times because you don't want all that nitrogen. So you're spitting and the plant says, yes, I'll have that. And there's constant recycling of nitrogen. It's the most powerful nitrogen cycling model in the soil. Yeah, and grazing, it's called, when you're eating bacteria constantly and spitting out what you don't want. Grazing is really important because you haven't got protozoa, you just get bacteria going ballistic and eating at the table first. And we'll talk about that as an example in a moment. So recycling nitrogen is huge. This concept of root zone architecture, building bigger and better and more diverse roots, you think, yeah, microbes or fungi. Well, protozoa are pretty close to what they can do because one of the organisms of the 3 types of protozoa is called amoeba, and it absolutely pours out a root-stimulating hormone called auxins in really large amounts. And you'll see, it's particularly on grasses and cereals and sugarcane, they're all grasses sort of, you'll see this branching everywhere after a treatment. It's wonderful. There's also a whole bunch of other reasons that are happening with that root building response, this root structure architecture that's happening from protozoa. And it's not just the nitrogen that's being recycled because they've got everything from those 10,000 bacteria, and there's lots of nutrient in that bacteria. Of course, plants are eating them all the time for those nutrients. They're all recycled as the protozoa take what it wants and spits out what it doesn't. But the most powerful of all of the benefits is that protozoa is the most favourite food of earthworms. They absolutely love it. I tried it on those raised beds I talked about, the ones that poisoned me. And basically, I just took a 20-litre bucket. I took some lucerne, which is filled. Lucerne is filled with the 3 varieties of protozoa. You use molasses and fish, and a fish tank aerator with 2 air stones, little cylindrical kind of pumice material that sends out thousands of little bubbles, and you need 2 for a 20-litre bucket to get enough small bubbles to aerate effectively. And for 2 days you brew it, not 1 day like most things. And then you've got under a microscope a tank full of protozoa. They just shoulder to shoulder like sardines in there. So I did that on my raised beds. Now I should have the 25 earthworms, but I was travelling constantly, that's my excuse. And I had 9 earthworms for a shovelful, which is not wonderful. But that's called a Lactobacillus tea. Now that's used all over Asia. It's huge. And some of the things that it's used, we'll talk about what BAM does, because this does some of the same things, just not quite as well. So EM was based on that concept with a few extras. BAM, EM's got 69 and 72, and we've got 80. So there's an American bloke who worked with Higa for 15 years. He's a microbiologist, went back, so I'm taking EM to America, then worked for 5 more years and discovered 9 more organisms that he included, and then developed a product in the US. I mean, obviously this is not patentable, so he just used the EM base. And I saw these wonderful trials about what was possible with this thing, so I brought it to Australia, and that's what we call beneficial anaerobic microbes, or BAM. Then I found you could brew it, and it's so simple. And so I taught everyone how to do that, and it's becoming a lot. It's interesting because when I decided that I was going to teach you more, and it was so simple and so cheap, you can make it for next to nothing. My 3-man management here at UCC said, are you crazy? I mean, you've got 14 microbial products in 52 countries. BAM is number 6. Next year it'll be number 14. You just lost a lot. I said, I don't care. At this stage of my life, I couldn't give a damn. You know, I don't even have enough time to spend money. You know, all the money I don't spend it anyway. So I just want to help farmers because I farm myself, and I think that's so important. Someone's got to look after them. So that's why I said, oh, I'm just going to teach you how to do it. And they said, you're stupid. But weirdly, in this weird universal law of given you shall receive, BAM is our number 1 product on the entire planet because people who couldn't afford it can now do it. And they're still going to buy the monoculture sometimes. So people who could never do it can now do it because it costs next to nothing when you multiply it yourself. So it worked out really well. So what does it do? Well, it's a huge list. It includes these. It includes this organism called purple non-sulfur bacteria, anaerobes that fix nitrogen. So it's really good for fixing nitrogen. It's a wonderful compost accelerant, but it needs to be an anaerobic compost covered with blue sheets of plastic full of silage tarps, and it composts in 8 weeks. And the yield from 1 tonne of compost is 910 kilos. That compares to 620 kilos of anaerobic compost. So you've got this much bigger. I mentioned it before. much better yield of compost when you've trapped everything in there and it all gets recycled back in instead of off-gassing methane, instead of doing cycle in the normal model. And you can speed it up, and they do it with EM in the UK, where they basically pull the cover off for 2 weeks, turn it in a machine, or a front loader, or a backhoe, or a bobcat, and then they put the cover on in 3 weeks, they turn again, and they produce the compost in 5 weeks. Well, 8 weeks is too quick, so I haven't done that, but it works really well. You get a lovely compost. You don't return it to lazy man's compost. It's really, really good. Very good in antagonists of disease organisms, suppressing pathogens. This is really cool because it's an anaerobe. You often see in dairy scenarios a stinking liability called the manure pond that you can turn into a wonderful asset. You just put manure, it feeds up, digests all of that stuff, and you've got this liquid fertilizer. Your whole pond becomes this wonderful liquid fertilizer, and you don't need much because it's got food. It just spreads through the whole pond. You can have an algal overdose in your pond, pour a couple of 20-litre buckets of BAM that you brew, cleans it up completely. You put it into troughs and clean up the algae in the trough, and biobubble and BAM are only 4 organisms apart. There's a wonderful probiotic, so that trough you clean up suddenly becomes probiotic for the animals, and you will hear the figures coming out of California relative to the probiotic effect of BAM. It is tremendous stuff. It can speed the decomposition through anaerobes with chemical residues. The Chinese have done a lot of work with EM cleaning out chemical residues. This is cool concept, a really good seed treatment. I mean, it costs you nothing. You're using like 5 litres per tonne of seed, and you brew it yourself. That's 50 cents per tonne. That's like 5 cents per hectare to treat the seed. It's ridiculously cheap when you brew it yourself. And tremendous seed treatment in terms of enhancing germination and get starting plant. So nothing really. There's nothing you can do more powerful than seed treatment. It's the cheapest thing will give the biggest response, and that's the fact. But this is something I'm not sure. Oh my goodness, it's a Chinese study, and you use 100 litres. It's so powerful. See, wheat seeds can last up to 70 years in the soil, and it's specific conditions. Now's my time on popping up, and there might be a certain pH, it might be an overdose of one thing or a deficiency of another. This is my time. I'm coming now. You work the soil, a whole bunch of wheat, and then the soil becoming because the oxygen coming in triggers reproduction. So a whole bunch of things. And so what you do with BAM is you put a ridiculous rate, because you can afford to, you put 100 litres per hectare of your brewed BAM out there, and all of these things that might make me unpercent will suddenly sprout together because they've got no choices. An overdose is a stimulant. And you just get a whole paddock full of green weeds, which you use as a green manure crop. You don't let them go to seed. You turn them all in, and you just exhausted your weed seed bank. Wonderful studies out of China, and think a great tool particularly to this biological thing where we don't want herbicides. I've not done it, but I'm going to, believe me. I'm going to try that. Great concept, diminishing. Really effective stuff to digest it because it's a facultative anaerobe, these organisms, which means they can also work with oxygen or without it. And they actually go a bit crazy in oxygen, so they break down really quickly. It's not good to put them into a compost aerobically because they get too active and the conversion isn't going to be on that way. Otherwise, it's going to be much less because they go crazy in oxygen situations, but very effective for breaking down stubble. Cleaning stock water or living fertilizer, it works like read your paddock and put it in the paddock. People go crazy about it. Really effective, and EM's used all over Asia for this purpose. You go down on your knees in a piggery, and I can actually taste ammonia and bacon sometimes. I can taste it as a male pig, which is not that taste, but basically that ammonia smell, which is pretty dense down here in my breeding unit, is not there when you get EM or BAM spray here and the BAM through that. It just takes the smell away. It's like Bokashi is an EM. You've heard of Bokashi, you've got a bucket full of bran with EM in it, and you chuck all your scraps in there, and it's instead of putrefaction, it's fermentation with no smell. And then you take that out and chuck it in your compost. So you can leave it under your sink and you put all your scraps in there, it doesn't go rotten. And that's EM that's in there, that's what Bokashi is. So it removes problem smells. Clean septic tanks, 2 cups. You won't need to ever have someone come and pump out your septic tank, it just beats it all. And it's wonderful, keeps it nice and clean and active. Kills mosquito larvae in the water. It's now used all over for that purpose. We sell our base mother culture to BAM to a Sydney company who then puts, say, lavender for the bedroom or eucalyptus for the bathroom in with it, which doesn't kill it. And it's a living cleaner. It eats the grime off your things, it cleans up your bench and whatever. basically, this concept of low-tech brewing equipment, we're going to talk. So while it sounds fantastic, and it is, there are some rules, and you need to know those rules. So we're going to go through the rules. Number one is that you've got to understand how important hygiene is, because you don't want to brew things that you don't want to brew. You know, you take dam water, there's a bunch of things in there, most of them are good, some of them are not, and they'll multiply. And you'll be brewing things you don't want to brew. So it's notoriously contaminated, that dirty water. So this is wrong. We'll be teaching that's wrong. You don't use full chlorine, because we thought that it was being all taken, and it's not. We now know that it's not removed completely by bubbling. There's only a percentage of it. So we're saying hydrogen peroxide is the best oxygen the best thing to add in. And you can Google and find out the rates. It's very low rates. You can buy 50% hydrogen peroxide from cleaning stores, super concentrated. What you buy in the chemist shop's only 3%. This is 50%. You've got to be careful handling it, because if you get it on your skin, your hand goes completely white. It oxidizes your skin, it comes back. You worry a bit for a minute. You go, oh my God. So it's not like going to kill you or anything, but you wouldn't want it in your eyes or anything. It's super concentrated, so you have to be very careful with it. When you're brewing, you've got to have enough oxygen. It's all about tiny, tiny, tiny bubbles. The more small bubbles there are, the more the level of dissolved oxygen. So you've got the situation where you've taken an inoculant and some food, and you're multiplying, and every 20 minutes, if they're bacteria specifically, they subdivide. You think 12 hours in, like you started with 1 billion, 20 minutes is 2 billion, 40 minutes is 4 billion, 80 minutes, 60 minutes is 16 billion. 80 minutes, we're only 80 minutes in, it's 32 billion, 64, 120, just got, by 12 hours, you've got trillions of trillions, all sucking oxygen. And if you don't deliver enough dissolved oxygen, they just dead. You're brewing a bunch of dead guys. And so you've got to deliver 6 parts per million. So you can buy these things or buy them and share them. You only need to know that your system can deliver them. You have to test it every time. $400 that put the dissolved oxygen, and you need 6 parts per million through the whole 24-hour brewing process. You need to maintain 6 parts per million, and you just put this meter in and charge you dissolved oxygen. At that huge drawdown from 12 hours in, you've got to have enough tiny bubbles to keep that level present, and that's lots of tiny bubbles.